sometimes feel as if the world is moving faster than you? As if no matter how hard you try, you can't keep up with the rushing feeling of being left behind? As I'm getting older, I find myself thinking a lot about the past, wondering about a time when everything moved at a slower pace, a time when I could manage things without much effort, a time that I could control. I don't like to give in to nostalgia. I understand that it can be dangerous. Depending on the dose, nostalgia can serve as a medicine or a poison. The term nostalgia originated from the Greek words nostos, meaning homecoming, and algos, meaning pain or ache. Initially, it was considered a medical condition associated with homesickness, where individuals felt distress or discomfort due to their longing for their homeland. Nostalgia refers to a tender affection for the past, usually directed towards a particular period or significant events that hold personal importance. It is often associated with fond memories, emotions, or experiences from one's earlier years. Nostalgia has the power to evoke a mix of emotions, including happiness, longing, and sometimes even a touch of melancholy. The tricky part about nostalgia is that you don't always have absolute control over it, which is why I don't like to indulge it all the time, but it's also a testament to the power of this feeling. Even though the fear of using it is always lurking, it's hard not to give in to nostalgia from time to time. As I've mentioned before, the more I age, the more I find myself thinking about the past and a simpler time. When this happens, there's a place that seems safe enough, a place where it feels like I can control nostalgia to healthy levels. More importantly, there is a place that I know I can return to when I feel overwhelmed. Sometimes I allow myself to dive into the comfort of VHS tapes. My generation is an odd one. I come from a time when there was no internet, no smartphones, and video games were a luxury that only a few could afford. The point being, I don't take entertainment for granted. Now, I know this makes me sound like I'm an old man, but the thing is, boredom was a constant companion during my teenage years, and you had to find ways to entertain yourself. There was a genuine struggle to discover new things to engage with, a time when the idea of on-demand entertainment was reserved for science fiction. One of the few places that offered a variety of fresh things was video stores. Your blockbusters, your jumbos, you name it. Now, I won't be hypercritical about it. If a video store were to open up my neighborhood tomorrow, I wouldn't go there to rent a movie. Things have changed. Even though a few of them are still up and running, it's no secret that rental stores were a product of their time. And I'm not suggesting that things were better in the old analog days. They were not, okay? But that doesn't mean they don't bring back good memories. There was a specific time and place for video stores, and if you haven't experienced those years, it may be difficult to understand the nostalgic feeling that comes from holding a VHS tape. Jesus, now I do sound like an old man. The more I reflect on those times, the more I recall the tiny little things that comprise the experience. The weird sensation of uncertainty, of not knowing what we were bringing back home with you. At best, you had a friend's recommendation or the clerk's opinion about the movie. At worst, it was a shot in the dark. The thing is, most of the time, if you wanted to know whether a movie was good or bad, you had to take the chance and bring the VHS tape home with you. I was about 8 years old when my parents allowed me to choose what I wanted to watch for the first time. And this was huge. It was the first time in my entire life that I had power over a situation. Yeah, at that point my life consisted of less than a decade, but the important thing was I had control. I I could travel among shelves and more shelves of titles and pick up that one movie that spoke to me the most. The thing about video stores back in the day was that I didn't want to risk my chance. You see, renting movies wasn't a thing we did all the time when I was young, so I tried to minimize my chances of failure. And by failure, I mean picking up a bad movie. Turns out that if I picked up a movie that I liked, chances were that next time I would pick it up again, and again, and again, and again, and well, you get the point, right? I watched the 94's The Mask more times than I can count. I've got vivid memories of holding that VHS tape at the video store and my parents going, "Are you going to pick that up again?" This was probably my first rental though. As time went on, I discovered the characters' origins in the comics and realized that the version I grew up to adore had no connection whatsoever with the source material. But that's fine. The Mask was a huge part of my childhood and I have fond memories of going to the video store and picking up that movie one more time. When I think about it, a few other favorites come to mind. An ever-changing lineup of films with different titles occupying the forefront of my memory when I tried to recollect those years. So many options, so little time.
We have to get on, we have so much time and so little to do. Strike that, reverse it. This way, please.
I can see myself picking up Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3. And even though I know this movie is not good, alright, I know that, but to me, it brings back a lot of good nostalgia. I remember the first time we entered the Turtles' home, the moment the lights turned on and the music started playing. I recall dancing along with the Turtles, trying to mimic Raphael's moves in our little living room. Raph was always my favorite turtle. But not all memories of VHS tapes are good though. I realized later that I was way too young to watch Akira when I first did. I guess from the perspective of parents in the 90s, all animation was presumed to be intended for children. Actually, you know what? Scratch that. They let me watch Dave Cronenberg's The Fly, and to this day I have a hard time gazing at Jeff Goldblum's face without being plagued by PTSD flashbacks of that beautifully grotesque and chilling piece of cinema created by a director whom, I might add, I later grew to admire quite a lot. But I shouldn't have watched this as a kid. That part is crystal clear. Another movie that comes to mind is John Hughes' Home Alone 2, a movie that made me realize that one day I might be left behind. The same feeling that I get more often these days. Now I'm a grown man and I have the tools to cope with these feelings, but when you're an 8-year-old with no siblings, man, to have a notion that one day you might be on your own is a scary one. Whenever I watched Home Alone 2, a sense of dread would always emerge, and for some reason I found myself repeatedly choosing this movie at the video store. It was as if I sought to take lessons from Kevin's misfortune and brace myself for the inevitable day when a similar situation might happen to me. To know that Kevin could make it on his own gave me hope that I would be fine too. I guess this is the power of stories. They provide us with a means to navigate real problems by experiencing them through the eyes of others. The further I delve into the past, the more vividly VHS tapes comes to mind, and with these memories, I get that mix of emotions I talked about earlier. You know, the ones provided by nostalgia, including happiness and longing, and sometimes even that touch of melancholy. Over time, their prices dropped, and occasionally I would receive one as a birthday gift, When I was 12 years old, my grandma presented me with a copy of Toy Story, a cherished edition that remains in my personal collection to this day, despite not having owned a VHS player for approximately 15 years. The story of a control freak cowboy and a delusional cosmonaut was one that I fell in love with almost immediately. It always amazes me the way the senses work, connection to memory. I mean, this tape is essentially a composition of plastic encased in a cheap cardboard cover. Individually, these elements wouldn't remind me of anything. However, this specific combination of art, letters, color, and weight instantly transports me back to my childhood. A time when I had control over things, where I could kiss my grandma and tell her how much I loved her. A time when I could pause, rewind, fast forward at my own pace. A time when I felt lighter, faster, and bolder. A time that doesn't come back, but one that I can revisit whenever I desire through the power of nostalgia. It's a time that brings me a melancholic comfort, one that is brought by VHS tapes.
Merry Christmas, you filthy animal. And a Happy New Year.